let's go ahead and move to Joe Biden, as we said, his own presidency. What's happening here? Where there is a growing recognition amongst the Biden campaign. Things are not going very well. Let's put this up there on the screen. Biden needs more empathy on the economy, Democrats say. I can't help but just love these things. Empathy on the economy. It's like, yeah, that's what we need. We need empathy on the economy, not policy on the economy.
They always assume it's a messaging issue, not a reality issue.
The president often touts strong job numbers, even as voters care more about inflation. Yeah, those stupid voters. Voter pessimism on the economy and Biden's handling of it appear locked in over 5 months before Election Day surveys showing many voters holding a rosier view of the pre-pandemic economy under Donald Trump, the presumptive Republican nominee. As he talks about the economy, Biden has often put an emphasis on positive data. At a recent fundraiser in Boston, he actually was touting his numbers on jobs and investments in manufacturing. We have to do more, but he says, but inflation has dropped from 9% to 3%. But what about cumulative inflation, my guy? What's the amount of inflation today versus where it was when he took office? That is more than 20%, especially whenever we look at grocery prices, gas prices, many of the other critical things, home prices as well. They say, and as we pointed to in our previous show, the Cook Political Report already shows Trump leading Biden in 6 out of 7 swing states. That's just one. We've done myriad polls here. I basically haven't found a single one where Biden is leading in the majority of those states. If we look at the Real Clear Politics polling average, Trump is up in every single one of these except tied, I believe, in the state of Wisconsin. I mean, these are all not just terrible polling numbers, but the fundamental strengths for Trump point to the exact same signs of strength where they were in 2020. So even though 2020 was off in terms of Biden, the one that we would consistently hear from the Trump campaign and others was look at his numbers on the economy. They're strong, strong, strong. And we would always, I wouldn't say brush it off. We're like, maybe, but COVID is still the #1 issue. The economy really came to save Trump whenever it came to making the election as close as it was back in 2020. And it really was the main driver, a lot of his growth, like with Latinos. Increasingly, we watch that young people, black voters, Latino voters, bleeding parts of that coalition to Donald Trump, highly strengthening him in the Sun Belt and possibly, all across the nation. All of that comes back to economic pessimism under Biden and economic, at least, back thinking that Trump can recreate some of the success that he had whenever he was president.
And I think while some Democrats and some people in Biden world are increasingly concerned, they're increasingly sounding the alarm. All indications are that Biden and his core team are like, no, we got it, are totally complacent. They think they're being underestimated yet again. They overlearned the lesson of 2020 in which they were sort of like written off, understandably, because they were getting like 4th and 5th place in every primary, and then they were able to come from behind. And so they just have this total arrogance of whatever the polls say, I'm sure we're fine. We understand the American electorate better than you do. And so, we're just gonna hand wave this away and live in a fantasy world, #unskew the polls. I think that continues to be the operating assumption among the people that actually matter in the Biden camp, which is a very small circle of people. At least that's what I have to assume, since they're not really changing course on anything. And, it's so true. Like, they really believe that the issue for them on the economy or with regard to, Israel and the upset with their foreign policy is like, oh, we just got to find the right slogan. We got to find the right method. We're going to show you in a little bit. They're hiring a meme manager to appeal to the young people. That'll fix it. Maybe it's not a messaging problem. Maybe there's a reality problem here. Maybe people see that their net worth has declined. Maybe people are still feeling the lingering impact of inflation, which continues, by the way. It's not at the high levels that it was, but it does continue. One of the things that we were looking at previously when we were feeling a little bit more, but Joe Biden could still pull this thing off, was that the consumer sentiment and people's feelings about the economy were getting better. They were sort of like trending in the right direction. Things were sort of trending in the right direction for him. That has stopped. And so now I think part of what's reflected in this piece from whatever Democrats they talk to who are actually pulling the fire alarm is this realization that, like, okay, there's not going to be some magical rescue of the economy that makes people feel different before election day. So we have to deal with this landscape as it exists. And just gaslighting people and trying to convince them things are better than they actually are is not the ticket. Not the ticket.
Yeah, exactly. And well, Krystal, do we want to take people through this quote? If we want to just give everybody a perfect example of what COPE on an industrial scale looks like, let's put this up there on the screen. This is the latest New Yorker interview from Isaac Scheutner with Simon Rosenberg. He is a Democratic strategist, and he is one of those who firmly believes that President Biden is not getting the credit that he deserves and that he's actually doing much better than he currently is. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, shall we? Now, here it says, is the Biden campaign running on false hope? They say, as 538 makes clear in their piece, while the polls in a few closely watched races were biased towards Republicans, the polls overall still had a bit of a bias towards Democrats. That's because generic ballot polls, the most common type of poll last cycle, has a weighted average bias of D+19, and polls of several less like coach watch races like governorships and Ohio and Florida have skewed towards Democrats. Okay, let's go to the next part. And he says at the very end, he literally goes, I am ending this interview because what you're doing is ridiculous. And he says, I have definitive proof what you're saying is not true. I don't care. I know what 538 wrote. I live this every day. So the point is that you are saying is wrong. I am on the record saying that what 538 has written is incorrect, and I have given you definitive proof otherwise. He literally believes that his own internal, like, skewing the polls, Krystal, is quote, direct proof. He says, the point I am making is the polls couldn't have been correct in 2022 if Real Clear Politics ended up 54 seats in the Senate. I mean, it's just not possible, right? So he keeps using, recency bias throughout the interview. But so much of this is an inability to grapple with the data of today. And I really encourage people to read this.
Read this whole, it was astonishing.
It is.
Because, okay, so just to give you a little bit of backstory on this dude. He came to prominence in the midterms because he was one of the few people who listened to his credit, was kind of right. He was like, this red wave thing, it's not happening. I think Democrats are going to do just fine. And he was right. Ryan, I believe, and Emily had him on counterpoints to make the case in favor of the Democrats before the midterms. And so that gave him a lot of cachet. So people have been really following. I think he has a Substack. I think it's called like Hopium, something like that. Right. Yeah. So anyway, he has a Substack where he does his like, here's why things are actually great for the Democrats, and don't worry, you got nothing to worry about, et cetera. That's like how he makes his living, at least some portion of it at this point. So he's got a lot personally invested in this narrative that's important to keep in mind. And listen, if someone's got a track record of success, you should take them seriously. So I've been watching what he's been tweeting out of like, okay, well, what's the case for the Democrats? Nothing, and I'm not the only one who said this, but nothing has made me feel more like, oh, they're getting their asses kicked.
Yes.
Than seeing how flimsy and how fragile this man was when he was pushed at all. Like, Scheutner, if you guys have read any of his interviews, he's famously an excellent interviewer. And even in these phone conversations, like the number of people that he is just embarrassed and humiliated is, miles long. I don't know why people even agree to the interviews. I don't know why they don't better prepare for the interviews. But anyway, it's always worth reading because he exposes people. He's very good at that. But on this one, he wasn't even going hard. He was just like, hey, but 538 says this other thing. And Rosenberg freaks out. Tries to end the interview because this is just insane and I'm ending this interview. This is ridiculous. Scheutner seems genuinely shocked. He's like, wait, why? What's going on? And so it just shows you even their greatest advocate, when even pushed on his data the tiniest bit, just completely crumbles. So if that's what they're banking on, I don't know. I mean, I also felt like I could make a better case for Joe Biden's political prospects than this dude. Because, one of the things that we always try to bring up in the entrance of like humility and, uncertainty and a lot of things can happen, blah, 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 is the fact that Democrats haven't outperformed in these special elections. I mean, he really didn't even get into that before he started having total meltdown city. So if this is the strength of the case being made by the Joe Biden advocates, they're in very rough shape at this point.
All the fundamentals, too, are terrible. Let's put this up here, for example, on the screen. And this is where, even empathy on the economy, at a certain point, I don't even care anymore at this point. For the first time in 2 years, there is no major American metro where home prices are falling. Nationwide, median sale price has risen to a record of $383,000, up from 4.8% year over year. Median monthly housing payment is currently at the record $2,890, up 15% year over year. All of that is because of interest rates. Now, if he had been ahead of the game and he'd been really trying to either pass legislation or talk about this to hit home to Americans that he understood, that's one thing. You could maybe build an empathetic case. But if you're coming to it 5 months out of the election, where you been, man? You've been focused on Ukraine and Israel this entire time when interest payments are going up to 7%, 8%. Even for people who have an 800 credit score, they're paying 7.2% mortgage rate. That's nuts. And yes, I know that it is not historically, it is not historically all that high. But if you look at the sale price, and especially what that monthly payment would mean compared to your median income as opposed to when it was high in the 1980s, then we definitely have much more of a housing unaffordability crisis than we did at periods of record high interest rates. And instead, what they are trying to do, this is fantastic, let's put this up there. The Biden campaign is hiring a meme manager. The job will entail recruiting content creators to make pro-Biden memes with a salary of up to $85,000. Wow, you're really gonna get a star player for $85,000. They say there are two universal truths about memes. This is from MSNBC, of course, so forgive the cringy
Even they were a little critical
they were
here,
like,
by
this
the way.
is not great.
Even they were like,
they're like, well, Democrats and likes have made attempts at internet humor that have ended up just being cringe. President Biden's re-election campaign is trying to take that further, they say, building a somewhat robust internet presence. The campaign is hiring a partner manager to handle day-to-day operations and engaging the internet's top content and meme pages with a salary of up to $85,000. So if you see pro-Biden memes that proliferate on your Instagram page or on your Twitter or wherever else you spend your time, TikTok, etc., just keep in mind these people might be getting paid. That is something interesting. Actually, I heard Rogan talk about this recently. I've known about this for some time. There are huge amounts of right-wing influencer accounts. This is just on the right. They're the only people that I know that are basically for sale. They will DM you and be like, hey, are you open to posting about X, Y, and Z candidate? And they're like, yeah, sure. And they're like, okay, I'll wire you, $13,000 or something to make 15 posts over the course of the election. Now, there's no evidence that this stuff actually makes any difference.
Right.
If I had to guess, it probably is more about helping the candidate feel good because they see pro stuff on their feed. But also keep in mind, if you do see people posting about that, you should ask them, are you open for sale? By the way, $0 here. Anything we post is purely at our own because we want to. But I cannot say the same for a lot of influencer accounts that are out there.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't work because you can't, young people in particular, they're very worried about the economy, and many are disgusted with the policy in Israel. And if you're not going to change those things, then they're not going to change how they feel about you. Like the two things, it's funny, the two things they point to in this article that have been like successful meme moments for Biden was back when there were those like Dark Brandon memes. Well, that was like,
organic.
It was organic. And then the other one they pointed to is the Kamala coconut tree one, which was not really favorable towards her.
That's not favorable to you.
They're
You just look like a
that
crazy
as a win.
Yeah.
So they have huge problems. They're living in a delusional fantasy world in which, people are going to come around and the polls are skewed and whatever cope they're living on at this point. But the reality is Biden's approval is absolutely trash. People's feelings about the economy and the direction of the country, absolute trash. Regardless of how people feel about Israel and Gaza, there is a real and very justified sense of you care more about these foreign conflicts than you do about me and my life. And so those things all connect. And Biden has some, by the way, more foreign travel coming up to continue to broadcast the message to America that I care more about that than I do about you. And you know what? People are getting that sense. They are absolutely 100% correct to have that feeling about Joe Biden at this point.
Yeah, I know. I mean, just the campaign right now, look, even the donors are the ones who are freaking out. There's a piece just came out this morning. It's just about how Biden donors are officially freaking out. Yeah, full-blown freak out over Biden. One advisor to major Democratic donors is keeping a, quote, running list of reasons that Biden could lose. All of them, and these are very, very high-dollar people, including multimillionaires who are donating to the campaign, are pressuring them to, quote, turn things around. But, like I said previously, you've got 5 months to go. That's not a lot of time. You can only build on what you've already established. And I don't think anybody with a straight face can say that Biden has been governing effectively over the last couple of years, and especially not in a way to actually convince people to vote for him again. If anything, his entire campaign is a reason to vote against the other guy. It has worked for him in the past, but it is not a reliable strategy or one that we can currently say is working.
Yeah, and the margins last time were very thin. So listen, would you say it's over for him? No. Maybe he can pull together Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those seem to be the states where he's hanging in there the best, but it's looking very grim over on the Biden side, looking very grim.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.